You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Hello and welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. I'm Matt Adams with a game recap of Indy's Week 9 debacle against the Minnesota Vikings. That's a 21-13 loss for the boys in blue in this Sunday night football game. It was a road matchup. We all know what happened the last time the Colts were on the road at Minnesota. And while the deficit wasn't quite the same, the Colts were pitching a shutout again, 7-0 this time, not 33-0 this time, and managed not to win the game. Although, they didn't have a whole lot go right for them in this game. They did not play well. The offense was pretty bad. It's one of those things that we're going to look back on, and we're just going to keep talking about it and thinking about it. What's the reason behind the quarterback switch? Was this a good idea? Is it something the team's on board for? Is it something that makes the team better or makes the team worse? And, it was a pretty uninspiring performance on Sunday night. Aside from the defense playing lights out in the first half and getting virtually nothing from the offense until late in the game when it didn't matter anymore, because the defense wears down after a while when you're on the field for a long time, and this has been a thing we've seen all season this year. You'll see that defense play a pretty good half of football, and then it's 3 and out, or turnovers from the offense, and then that defense just gets tired after a while. It's not an excuse, but it is an explanation for why it seems like the defense can play so good for a time, and DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart and those guys up front were really, really good for much of this game. So again, your final score 21-13 drops the Colts to 4-5 on the season. Indy's best drive on offense was its first drive. The problem is that first drive ended on a botched handoff between Joe Flacco and Jonathan Taylor, and that resulted in a fumble that got recovered by the Vikings. And then at least the Colts, for their part, responded with an interception in the end zone by Zaire Franklin to keep the Vikings from scoring. And we saw a lot of different plays from this Colts defense in this game. They gave up some yards. They're always going to give up some yards based on their scheme. They let Justin Jefferson go crazy, but, many teams have let Justin Jefferson go crazy. And I think the Colts were trying to live with yards and not give up like the huge scoring plays, and really for the most part they did an okay job of that in this game. So what did the quarterback switch do for the Colts? Well, it's hard to say. I mean, it's not hard to say in this game. It's going to be hard to say long term. Are we going to stick with Joe Flacco for a few games, see where that goes? But what we do know is this: the Colts lost. They had the lowest offensive output of the season at 227 total yards. Their running game was a shell of itself. I know they were missing Bernhard Raimann on that left side at left tackle. And, of course, that's never a great thing. But they had their lowest offensive total of the year in terms of yards. Had really struggled running the ball. Their best runs probably came on that first drive against Minnesota. And then after that, it was just sort of we saw from Jonathan Taylor a lot from what we saw from Trace Sermon at times this season, where he gets the ball, and as soon as he's got the ball, he's got people, biting at his ankles. And when you don't have that threat of Anthony Richardson kind of being the +1 against the defense, it makes a really big difference out there in the running game. And Jonathan Taylor, unfortunately, was sort of the reverse beneficiary of that, if you will. And Flacco barely completed 60%. He was under 60%, technically, under 60% in completion percentage, 16 for 2,779 yards, no touchdowns. He did throw an interception, and it came at a key moment in the game in which the Colts just could not afford it. The offense only mustered 6 points this week. They gave up numerous opportunities to score points with either a turnover on downs. We had missed field goal again from Matt Gay. You'll be shocked that Matt Gay's long field goal faded to the left and was wide left, because we have not seen that a single time before this season. He did add another couple field goals later. One of them was a long field goal, and it just kind of snuck inside that left upright there for Indianapolis. Lights out defense in the first half. They scored the only touchdown for the Colts in this game, in which Grover Stewart was on a mission. He just put the center on his butt, just knocked him right over, got to Sam Darnold, knocked the ball out of his hands, then Kenny Moore picked it up and did the rest. So, that was a positive, and that was the reason that the Colts had that 7-0 lead at halftime, was on the play of the defense, forcing some turnovers, keeping Minnesota out of the end zone. And then Minnesota also, Matt Gay wasn't the only guy to miss field goals in this game. Minnesota missed a couple. One was a long one was a chip shot from the Vikings. So, that kept the Colts in the game as well. The Vikings were not very good in this game, really up until the fourth quarter or so. And the Colts just, they had a couple of turning points in this game where Indianapolis could have taken control of this game, could have taken control of their destiny in the season and then in the division. They did get the Texans to lose this week on Thursday Night Football to the Jets, unable to take advantage of that, because right now the Texans essentially have a three-game lead over the Colts because they beat them head-to-head, so the Colts have to finish a game ahead of the Texans in the standings in order to win the division. And right now, from what we're seeing from this football team, that feels like a pipe dream. I thought maybe Indianapolis could muster 10-7, 9-8, somewhere in there, be in that playoff picture. They're a 4-5 football team without an identity that has decided to change quarterbacks in midseason, when it was kind of told to us all year that we knew this was going to be a year to develop our young quarterback. We know he's got some deficiencies. We're going to work on those things, and the only way he's going to get better is by playing football. And the team is not letting him play football right now. He is on the bench. He's observing. They've decided to go with Joe Flacco, the veteran signal caller, who really has shown some flashes this year. He's still got a big arm and all of that, but some of the decision-making that we saw from Flacco in this game is going to be scrutinized, because they had a couple of chances in this game, especially late before Minnesota scored what ended up being the game-clinching touchdown in this thing. Flacco had a couple of moments to make some plays for the Colts, and instead, it just did not work out for this team on the offense. And I'll talk to that a little bit later. 3 of 11 on third down, so the Colts weren't particularly efficient on third down. Time of possession, lopsided once again. This will be no surprise to anyone who's watched the Colts this season. The offense just goes through these spans of complete ineptitude where they cannot do anything, and it's 3 and out and 3 and out and 3 and out. And it does not matter whether it's Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco under center. This is just not a consistent offense that can sustain drives. They are built on the big play, and that is fine if you're getting the big plays, but they have not gotten the big plays in the last couple of weeks, and it is shown. And when you don't get those big plays, it doesn't offset your offensive inefficiency. And I think that's the thing that probably the Colts were hoping for when they did this change over from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco. They knew it wasn't sustainable, and we nicknamed a podcast title was Not Sustainable this season. We knew it was not something that the Colts could do all the time, where they could just go into this where their offense would just go into this shell and not do anything, and then all of a sudden you would bust out a big play, and that would be the big equalizer in the game. It's a dangerous way to live. You can't live that way in football, and the Colts were trying to live that way. They can't. They've proven it. And so the thinking to me was that maybe it had something to do with the tap out, maybe it has something to do with maturity, maybe they didn't think that Anthony Richardson was reading the field the way that he should. Whatever reason they decided to make this change, the reason they did it was because they felt confident that Joe Flacco could come in, read a defense, make those little plays, those little 3 and 4 yard passes or those 5 and 6 yard passes that would keep the offense on the field, sustain some drives. You complement that with some run game, and then boom, you've got an offense. And that is not what happened here at all this week. It was not good. There are very few positives on the offensive side of the ball here. And this was a good defense from Minnesota, make no mistake about it. That scheme is very flexible. They give you a ton of looks. They put all these guys at the line, and then some of them come for pressure, some of them don't. They don't do it the same way every time. And I don't, part of the reason that the Colts probably wanted to play Flacco this week was because he's a veteran who's seen it all, right? He's seen everything, and there's nothing that the Vikings can show him that he's not been able to diagnose. But still, there's a lot of processing going on here, and Flacco made some bad reads. He made some bad decisions in this game, and that is not why the Colts changed quarterbacks, for them to put in a guy who makes bad decisions. They changed quarterbacks because the guy they had in was making bad decisions, and they wanted someone in there who would make good decisions. But Joe Flacco did not make some good decisions last night, and it cost this team the football game. And so the Colts are just essentially, they're a mess. They are now a sub-500 football team. They've had some chances to maybe take the division lead, and they have made sure that they did not take advantage of those things. And, now they face a very tough stretch of games, and it starts with the Buffalo Bills next week at home. That's a pretty good football team. And that is a football team that can tear you apart in the secondary. And if the Colts don't have some sort of offense to go along with that, and I know there's turmoil, and I know it's strange to mix up your quarterbacks in the middle of the season like this, when you've been told all along that we know we're gonna take our lumps and we got to let this guy develop. It's not going to get any easier, is my point here. The season is quickly slipping away. Now, one of Shane Steichen's key pillars of coaching is resiliency. And this has been a resilient team under Steichen. They faced adversity. They've had their star quarterback, their rookie quarterback, go down last year and came within, a fourth down pass of maybe getting into the playoffs. They have faced a lot of adversity this year too, with the offense not being sharp, but finding plays and manufacturing points. But they've not been able to do that the past couple of weeks. And there's just a lot of holes here. I mean, there were several visits they never got into the red zone, first of all, on the offensive side of the ball, but they still had opportunities to get points. We had Matt miss a field goal. They gave up a field goal. They didn't get a field goal attempt or get a chance to continue a drive thanks to an interception. And then, they were trying to kind of press things on a 3rd and 2 and a 4th and 2 play as well, and it didn't work out for the Colts, and that ended up leading to the Vikings getting that game-clinching touchdown late. Also want to mention Minnesota ran 71 offensive plays to Indy's 49. And that's why time of possession was so lopsided. Nearly 37 minutes from Minnesota to just over 23 from the Colts. And the Colts are last in the league in time of possession. And that is a cumulative stat that we have seen throughout the season. It's not gotten any better. And that's when you're inefficient on offense, then it just puts your defense out there on the field for a long time, and it leads to breakdowns, it leads to tired guys, and you just cannot sustain that. And that's Dave and Mike and I have talked about that numerous times this season. So a couple things I want to point out, and then we'll hear from Coach Steichen. 2nd and 30 was really a fun time for everybody. We had an illegal chop block with Jonathan Taylor and Matt Gonzalez, I believe, on that play. It then got complicated by a false start from Braden Smith, so a 2nd and 25 becomes a 2nd and 30. And Joe Flacco found Adonai Mitchell for just a beautiful toe tap, 22-yard pass on the sideline. So suddenly the 2nd and 30 becomes a 3rd and 8. And the Colts are still kind of within field goal range here. And it's kind of critical that they're able to get a score, get some momentum, or sustain the drive, keep the drive going, maybe try to get a touchdown, which by the end of this game was sort of a laughable proposition for this team. But they went down, and then on the very next play after that, beautiful throw, beautiful catch on that 2nd and 30 to Mitchell. Then Flacco tries to force one on the left side to Josh Downs, and that gets intercepted. And so bye-bye scoring opportunity. Now, the Colts were fortunate because they came right back, and Nick Cross intercepted Sam Darnold like a couple plays later, and that did lead to a field goal. So the Colts did recover those points in a sense, but still, it was a bad throw and a bad decision by Flacco. Later in the game, the Colts needing to score, obviously, facing a 3rd and 2. I think at this point the game was still a 14-10 affair. So, you'd rather have more than a field goal, but a touchdown would be ideal, but you've got to get some points, right? So you've got a 3rd and 2, and really your goal there, keep the drive alive. And so Flacco takes it, and he tries to force the ball down to Michael Pittman Jr., who's got a couple of defenders bracketing him. Didn't have much of a chance of catching that ball, I don't think. And Pittman got banged up on that play. He's already banged up anyway with a bad back. Looks like he may have dislocated his finger on the play as well, I think I heard during the broadcast. Meanwhile, we've got Trey Sermon underneath on a little check down route that would have easily gotten you a couple of yards and sustain that drive. But couldn't get it to him, decided to try to take the deeper shot. It wasn't like a super deep shot, but the deeper shot to Michael Pittman Jr., there was nothing there. So that brings up a 4th and 2 play. And you've got Stephon Gilmore against Ashton Dulin. And Ashton Dulin kind of gets crunched on this play as well. Didn't get much separation, couldn't really get him the ball. And that's a turnover on downs. So no points, nothing on that one. The Vikings then go down. They score a touchdown late, and the clock is the Colts' enemy, and that was pretty much it there. So, just a really rough day for the Colts in general. Really the only positives for me came on the defensive side of the ball. You had Big Grove and his sack fumble that led to the touchdown by Kenny Moore. You had Zaire Franklin with the end zone interception early in the game. And then Nick Cross, who has, without a doubt, been a pretty good bright spot for the Colts this year after we weren't really sure if he would be in this game, getting an interception that kind of led to Indianapolis getting their first offensive points of the football game. But you know what? You've probably heard me talk enough. Let's listen in on head coach Shane Steichen.
Obviously very disappointing going on the road, not getting it done. It starts with myself. I'm the head coach. Everything that's on that field, I'm in charge of, so I wasn't good enough for the guys tonight.
Is Jonathan Taylor shaking up at all? Is that why he left the game?
Not that I know of, no.
Just, you guys are throwing pass pro, is that Trey Sermon? Is that kind of the idea behind it?
Yeah, we have faith and trust in Trey to go in there when he has to go in there. Obviously, had a few runs there too, so that's where it was at. Yeah, I mean, credit to Minnesota, too. They do a lot of good things. But, again, I'm the head coach. Everything that's on that field, my name's on it. So they did a lot of good things defensively. They mixed up their coverages, blitz looks. We knew it was going to be a tough challenge coming into the game. It's a good football team we played. But at the end of the day, it wasn't good enough, and I got to be better for the guys.
How do you think Joe Flacco handled tonight?
I mean, he was fine, obviously. He's been playing in environments like this before. But, again, it starts with myself as the head coach.
You said a few times after the game this season, what can you do to be better?
I got to keep looking at, what we're doing offensively. You know what I mean? We got 8 left. We're halfway through the year now. And just kind of look at, scheme stuff and what we're doing, and we'll go from there.
Is Flacco still starting quarterback moving forward?
Right now, yes.
Do you think that going from one quarterback to the other has affected the offense?
I don't think so. I mean, you just go. It's just like with any position, right? You got to roll and next guy up, and obviously Joe went in there tonight for us.
How did the change in quarterback maybe affect your running game? Because obviously Anthony gives you a boost there. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we got to be efficient, running the football, there with JT and stuff. But we'll get that cleaned up. I have full faith and confidence in that we'll get that cleaned up moving forward.
You guys came out running a little bit more today. Is that just to kind of stay out of their blitz looks?
We popped a few runs early. Obviously, that first drive, we popped the big one there, and then we converted on that 3rd and 1 to Granson there, and then, we turned the ball over there. But and then they obviously did a good job against the run there, and we had some penalties. But we got to get it cleaned up. We'll get it cleaned up.
Shane Pitt has had 1 catch each of the last 2 games. How does he get more involved?
Yeah, we got to get him going early in games. Obviously, we have plays up for him, and sometimes the coverages, doesn't allow him to. But we got to keep finding ways to get him, going.
Can you do that given how limited he is just physically with the injury?
Yeah, I mean, you try to find ways for sure. You know what I mean? Even though he's dealing with something, you still try to find ways.
Shane, you said that
Yeah, right now, yes. Yep.
Shane, I know it's just one drive at that opening possession. What kind of negative tone setter was that? You go right down the field, just an unforced error.
Yeah, I mean, those are always tough, when you're moving the ball and you have the turnover there, but you got to find ways to bounce back from them, the environment that you're in with the crowd noise and stuff, you got to find ways to keep the momentum going and keep drives going.
You guys have tried to bring more pressure in tonight, but there's a balance with that, and obviously they got Jefferson and those receivers. What was that calculation like?
I thought Gus and those guys did a heck of a job getting the turnovers. They played good all game. They really did. Obviously, they kept us in it the whole time, getting the turnover there, the first one to get us a touchdown there. But I thought our defense did a hell of a job.
Talk about schematic adjustments. Did you consider at all changing the play callers on offense, or are you comfortable doing that?
Right now, I feel comfortable doing it right now, yes.
Where can Joe be better after tonight? I mean, obviously, you have your part, but, he's better. Where can he be better?
Yeah, we'll go back and look at it. I mean, there might have been a few completions here and there that we could have had. But again, he's a calm guy that's been playing at a high level for a long time, so obviously a lot of faith in him.
It's been a little bit since we've seen Alec upon one of those explosive plays. I guess what needs to happen to get him kind of back to doing that?
Yeah, I mean, you have them up. They did a great job defensively. They were in a two-shell pretty much the whole game, staying over the top. We were able to hit some curl routes inside to them there, obviously, a few times. Yeah, we got to find ways to get those chunks going versus different looks.
How did you feel Gonzalez came out of this game against that type of a defense?
I thought he did a good job. You know what I mean? It's hard to watch the O-line all the time. You're watching the skill guys running down, but go back and look at that. But I thought he battled first, his first opportunity for sure.
As the offense was struggling, did you ever think about putting Anthony there tonight?
I did not tonight, no.
What do you think about just Corpus Stewart in play that kind of sparks you off?
Yeah, he was awesome. Like I said, the whole defense, the defensive line was awesome. The back end was awesome. Linebackers, defense had a hell of a game.
That was Indianapolis Colts head coach Shane Steichen reacting to the Colts' 23-13 loss to the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday Night Football. Yeah, just not a great game. The Colts made the quarterback switch this week for Joe Flacco. Just 179 yards passing, no touchdowns. He was sacked 3 times, although most of those sacks came on the last drive of the game there, as the Colts were desperately trying to get the ball downfield against Minnesota to try to make it a game. It never looked particularly comfortable to me against Minnesota, but I don't think that's uncommon for a lot of quarterbacks. They give you a lot of looks. They load up that line of scrimmage. Some guys come, some guys don't. Sometimes you drop defensive linemen into coverage here and there. Sometimes you bring your safety in down underneath, and a lot of different looks. And I think, too, not having Ryman in there at left tackle probably didn't help a whole lot there. Josh Downs was targeted 9 times. He finished with 6 catches for 60 yards. I thought Alec Pierce, he didn't have a big game. He didn't have that big splash play where, he got open for 60 yards downfield or whatever. But I thought he had quietly a nice game. He had 3 catches for 41 yards. He also picked up a late pass interference penalty that led to Indy's last score. And so Indy took a field goal there with 30 seconds left or so to make it an 8-point ball game, and then they tried to get an onside kick at the end there to try to get a desperation heave or something like that. But Vikings were able to recover the onside kick. Again, like Flacco, a lot of Colts fans wanted to see him in there. And that's fine. I understand it. The guy's got a good track record. He's a good quarterback. You would expect that he would be able to hit some of these passes that we've not been able to hit, and that things would be a little bit better and sharper on offense. And unfortunately for Colts fans and for the Colts themselves, Flacco had kind of a rough game. And, the whole team had a rough game on the offensive side of the ball. And again, you've got to give some credit to Minnesota's defense. They wanted to take away certain things. They were able to do that. They wanted to give a lot of different looks. They were able to do that. And the Colts were not able to effectively counter that in any significant way. So, let's hear from quarterback Joe Flacco.
Yeah, listen, they definitely got after us. I mean, they kind of did what they were going to do the whole game, and we just, we'd have a play here and there, but then we'd either shoot ourselves in the foot or just not really be able to keep drives going.
On that first drive, what happened on the exchange there with Jason?
I mean, you guys probably could see it's just an unfortunate happening, and we had a good drive going there, and just one of those things that kind of have bad luck there. And yeah, we have Josh kind of working a little route there to kind of shake him loose, and it just felt like we were probably right there in field goal range, edge of field goal range, and just trusting my guy, and he undercut it when I threw it and got his eyes back and picked it off.
So you kind of knew what they were going to try to do against you guys. Are you surprised at just how difficult it was to get any kind of chunk plays in the system?
I think anytime you have a day like we had tonight, you're probably surprised a little bit that you weren't able to get it going, because they obviously did a really good job against us tonight. So coming in here against a team like this, it's going to be difficult, but I don't think you ever anticipate something like that.
They didn't have a sack until the final drive. Did you guys feel like, for the most part, picked up the blitzes?
Yeah, I thought we did a good job. I mean, ultimately, I don't think they, maybe they brought singles and stuff like that, but I thought our guys did a great job up front. It was more about just us kind of executing in the back end. Yeah, by the time fourth down came around, I mean, they were playing everybody tight there, and I was trying to hold on to the ball as long as I can to kind of give the one guy that separate and maybe a shot, So.
You can work better like yourself. I know the disguise a lot of stuff. How does that complicate things for you?
No, listen, I think you could see that they were kind of running out on the snap and doing what they were doing. Listen, anytime you can make, things a little bit more difficult, whatever it is, I would just kind of give them credit in terms of like what they did play. They just played it well, and they had guys sitting in spots to kind of take things away from us, and it wasn't necessarily that they were fooling us out there. I think we knew what we were attacking. I think they just did a good job of it, and we didn't do a great job of executing on our end. Well, Josh is just a good player. I mean, so anytime you can get the ball to him, get him going a little bit, it definitely kind of feeds to the emotion of the team as well.
Shane said they pretty much lived in too high to take away the ball. When you don't have the ball, how do you just have to complete a lot of passes, keep drives going?
Pretty much, yeah. Get the run game going, complete some stuff underneath. Things like that. You got to do your best to sustain drives early in the game and maybe get them out of doing some of that stuff. And that means, complete some short passes and run the ball.
That was quarterback Joe Flacco after the Colts and their 21-13 loss to the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday Night Football. Again, the Colts are 4-5 now, so they're under 500. They are a very mediocre football team that looks like a very mediocre football team right now. And I don't know if that improves. They've got their next few games are pretty tough. Coming up next, they've got Buffalo, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. And it doesn't really get a whole lot better from there. They're home against Buffalo. That's a 1 o'clock kickoff on CBS 4. After that, they're at the New York Jets. Jets aren't great. That should be a winnable game. It is a road game. Be on NBC and Peacock. And then they're at home again against the Detroit Lions, who have turned into one of the NFL's best teams in recent seasons. After that, it's the Patriots at New England, and then it's the bye week. So we'll see what happens with the Colts. I don't know if they'll try to do if they'll make a reversey on the quarterback situation, or if they're just going to stick with Flacco and hope that they can develop Richardson. But the long and short of it is that right now, that since Andrew Luck retired, and we hate to have to mention that guy's name on this podcast, not because we hate him or anything like that, but just because when he retired, it set the plan for this franchise, just completely blew it up. And since he has retired, the Colts have not been able to figure out the quarterback position. We've talked about the carousel. You all know the names. You all know who's been there. They drafted a kid. He got hurt last season. He needs reps. He needs to play. And then when he doesn't meet the standards that the team wants, they bench him. And it just sets up this really tough situation for the Indianapolis Colts and Colts fans to try to get a handle on how things are going. But it's not getting any easier for Indianapolis. Like I said, Buffalo next week at home. I guess probably Flacco's going to be the starting quarterback. Who knows? Maybe they'll change their minds again. But at this point, again, 4-5 on the season, lowest offensive output of the year. The offense scored only 6 points this week. Had it not been for Grover Stewart and his big play and Kenny Moore's recovery, then the Colts would not have scored a touchdown at all this week. And this is from a coach, mind you, who is regarded as a very, very good offensive mind. And right now, the Colts' biggest problem is their offense, but it all starts at quarterback, and that also goes up into the front office. All right, so that's enough from me right now. Let's wrap it up. You've been listening to the Colts Blue Zone podcast. Mike and Dave will talk about everything Colts related a little bit later this week. Thanks for listening.